time to go behind the scenes. We've got massive Season 5 spoilers, hidden set secrets, and the funniest cast bloopers. Let's get into it. Starting with Chapter 1, The Crawl, the vibe on set is completely different right from the jump. The Duffer Brothers have been open about how this season is unique because it starts immediately in chaos. We have seen footage of the sets, and it is grim. The crew has built these massive environments where nothing feels normal. One of the coolest BTS reveals for this first episode is the radio station set, The Squawk. The production designer, Chris Trujillo, called it his favorite set of the season, and for good reason. They essentially built a fully functional radio station based on a real one in North Carolina that the Duffer Brothers loved. The level of detail is insane. They replicated the architecture, the layout, even the call letters from the photo of the real station. But here's the movie magic trick. The set has a spiral staircase that the actors walk down, but it leads to nowhere. The basement of the radio station, where a lot of the action happens with Steve, Nancy, Jonathan, and Robin, was built on a completely separate stage. They have to cut the footage to make it look seamless. Speaking of the older teens, the behind-the-scenes dynamic between Joe Keery, Steve, and Charlie Heaton, Jonathan, is hilarious. In the show, there is still this tension and rivalry, especially with Jonathan feeling insecure about his relationship with Nancy. But on set, they are having a blast. There is a scene where a transmitter on a radio tower goes down, and Steve tries to show off by climbing it to fix it. We see BTS footage of Joe and Charlie climbing this massive orange metal tower against a blue screen, racing each other and cracking jokes. Joe Keery is up there on a safety wire shouting, "I'm flying, Jack," like he's in Titanic. Another huge addition to the cast for Season 5 is the legendary Linda Hamilton, who plays Dr. K. The Duffers wanted someone iconic, someone who felt like a legend to them growing up, and they got Sarah Connor herself. But Dr. K is no hero. Unlike Dr. Brenner, who was interested in science and exploration, Dr. K is described as a military pragmatist. She is dissecting fleshy sacks from the upside down and looking for 11 not to study her but to weaponize her. BTS footage shows Linda Hamilton in the makeup chair and laughing with the crew, but the second the cameras roll, she is terrifyingly cold. She has a scene where a tentacle shoots out at a glass window and she doesn't even flinch. Moving into Chapter 2, The Vanishing of Holly Wheeler, things get incredibly intense for the Wheeler family. We have known Karen Wheeler as the oblivious mom for 4 seasons, sipping wine, reading romance novels, totally unaware her son is fighting interdimensional demons. Cara Buono, who plays Karen, joked in an interview about that old 80s PSA, "It's 10 p.m., do you know where your children are?" Well, in this episode, the reality of Hawkins finally crashes into her house, literally. There is a scene where a Demogorgon smashes through the ceiling of the Wheeler home. We see BTS footage of the stunt team hurling Ted Wheeler through a wall after he tries to defend his home with a golf club. He gets slashed across the chest, and the makeup effects team, led by Mike McCash, spent hours creating these gruesome, deep claw marks on the actors to show just how dangerous these monsters are. But the real star of this BTS sequence is Karen. She grabs a wine bottle, Cara Buono joked that all of Karen's drinking finally paid off, and smashes it over the Demogorgon's head to protect her daughter Holly. It turns into a full-on fistfight between Karen and the monster. The Duffer Brothers talked about how they wanted to show that Karen has that same badass gene that Nancy has. It's a huge payoff for a character who has been on the sidelines for so long. Then comes Chapter 3, The Turnbow Trap. The gang is trying to find Holly, and it leads them to the Turnbow house. The Duffers love a good monster trap. Think back to Season 1 with the bear trap and the lighter fluid. For this final season, they wanted to do one last massive trap sequence. We see the cast, Steve, Nancy, Jonathan, Robin, Dustin, and Lucas, tearing up the Turnbow living room, sawing a huge hole in the floor, and filling the basement with spikes. The stunt coordination for this was wild. Lucas acts as the bait because he's the fastest. We see the stunt double for the Demogorgon chasing Lucas down a hallway, and Lucas leaps over the hidden hole just as the monster crashes through it into the spike pit. Then they hit it with a flare, and the practical fire effects are insane. The stunt performer in the suit is thrashing around while fully engulfed in real fire. It's visceral and practical and looks incredible. We also get a surreal, creepy look at what's happening with Holly. She's trapped in a vision with Henry Creel, Vecna, but he's not the monster we know. He appears as a normal human in a pristine version of the Creel house. Amy Campbell Bower explains that Henry has chosen Holly specifically because she's smart and hard to break. The costume design for this human Henry is fascinating. It's a mix of Mr. Rogers and Dr. Brenner. He wears warm brown suits to subconsciously remind the kids of Brenner, Trust, but with a pop of red in the tie to mimic Mr. Rogers. It's psychological manipulation at its finest. Finally, Chapter 4, Sorcerer, ramps the action up to 11, literally and figuratively. This episode features a massive battle at a location called Max Z, which is a huge outdoor set surrounded by blue screens and construction cranes. The scale is movie quality. We see military Humvees flipping over, explosions rocking the set, and soldiers flying through the air on wires. This is where we see Vecna 2.0. After his body was destroyed in Season 4, he has rebuilt himself, and the new design is horrifying. It's inspired by Pinhead from Hellraiser. The makeup effects team used a combination of practical prosthetics and a tracking suit to create negative space in his body, making him look skeletal and less human than ever before. Jamie Campbell Bower was having the time of his life on set, describing how he got to chuck Winona Ryder to one side and blow up soldiers with a flick of his wrist. But the biggest twist revealed in the BTS for this episode involves the lab. Hopper and Eleven infiltrate a base thinking Vecna is there. They fight through soldiers, and Linda Hamilton's Dr. K gives them a brutal beating. David Harbour joked about getting tossed around by her all day, but when they finally reach the containment unit where they think Vecna is hiding, the door opens to reveal Callie. That's right, 8 from Season 2 is back. It's a massive misdirect. While the team thought they were hunting Vecna, he was actually out in the world rebuilding himself. The emotional climax of this BTS footage focuses on Will Byers. Noah Schnapp talked about how Will has been the victim for so long. Shy, fearful, always the one being rescued. But in this season, he steps up. We see raw footage of Will standing alone on the battlefield, surrounded by fire and bodies. He's dirty, exhausted, but he looks furious. He screams and thrusts his hand forward, appearing to harness his connection to the Upside Down and use it as a weapon. Noah described filming this moment as pure joy, finally getting to play Will as a powerful force rather than a scared kid. It looks like Will is finally going to be the sorcerer he always played in D&D. Now, let's look back at where it all began. Season 1 dropped us headfirst into the mystery of Will Byers' disappearance and introduced us to a cast of kids who would steal our hearts. It felt so authentic, so perfectly 1983, but even the most meticulous show has a few little time-traveling hiccups and on-set blunders. Let's talk about the little details that only the most eagle-eyed fans would spot. For starters, Dustin's watch is a Casio F91 Glow, a true icon. That wasn't actually released until 1991. Whoops. Similarly, when the boys ride their bikes to school, you can spot a white Volvo 745 in the background, a car that wouldn't hit the market until 1985. And in the high school parking lot, keep an eye out for a yellow Ford Festiva from '86 and a Chevy Nova from '85. It seems Hawkins was just a little ahead of its time. There are other tiny goofs too. In an early scene, Will dials 911 on a rotary phone. While the 911 system existed, it wasn't widely available in small towns like Hawkins in '83. And our beloved Chief Hopper, while his officers carry period-correct radios, is seen sporting a modern Motorola digital radio that wouldn't exist for another 2 decades. Yo, musically, when Jonathan is driving and listening to The Clash, the song that fades out is Go Nowhere by Reagan Youth, a track that wasn't even recorded until 1984. Speaking of sound, there's a funny little audio goof that once you hear it, you can't unhear. When Jonathan is taking flash photos near the crime scene, you hear that loud, satisfying sound of an old-school flash. But later, when he's secretly taking photos by Steve's pool without a flash, the exact same sound effect is used for every shutter click. It should have just been a quiet little click, but hey, maybe his camera was just extra dramatic. But let's get to the good stuff. The bloopers. One of the most adorable outtakes from the entire series comes from the very first season, when the kids were all so tiny. In a scene at the Wheelers' dinner table, Mike, Finn Wolfhard, is supposed to take a drink of milk and snort a little. The snort actually made it into the final episode, but one of the takes they filmed is comedy gold. Finn takes the swig of milk and lets out a snort that seems to genuinely surprise himself. He pulls back from the glass with a look of wide-eyed shock, as if he can't believe what just came out of his own nose. Another classic comes from a moment of high tension. The gang needs to build a sensory deprivation tank for Eleven so she can contact Will in the Upside Down. This requires a lot of salt. So, Chief Hopper, David Harbour, and Jonathan Byers, Charlie Heaton, head to the school to borrow a few dozen bags. The blooper from this scene unfolds as Hopper tosses heavy bags of salt out of a storage shed, and Jonathan is supposed to catch them and stack them. The first bag? No problem. Charlie catches it like a pro. The second one, he barely corrals it, fumbling as he tries to get it on the pile. Then it all goes downhill. Hopper lobs another bag that smacks Charlie right in the arm, and he just completely loses it, doubling over in laughter. You can't even blame him. You just know those bags were heavy, and after a few takes of that, anyone would break. Now, let's talk about one of the most iconic moments of the entire season. The van flip in Chapter 7, The Bathtub. That scene where the kids are on their bikes being chased by the bad guys from Hawkins' lab and 11 just stares them down and flips an entire van over their heads with her mind? Chills. Every time. You'd think a stunt that huge would be all CGI, right? Well, the Duffer Brothers, in all their glory, were determined to do it for real. They called it their most fun episode, but the van flip was anything but. Matt Duffer explained their plan was to shoot the kids on their bikes, then merge it with a separate shot of an actual van being flipped. They did tests in a parking lot, setting off explosives under the van to launch it. During the actual filming, however, one of the explosives failed to go off. This sent the van skidding sideways right into one of the cameras, destroying it and costing the production thousands of dollars. Can you imagine the stress? But the Duffers were convinced they could get it. They persuaded the line producer to let them try one more time, and on the second go, it was perfect. The van soared into the air exactly as planned, creating the legendary shot we see in the show. Season 2 brought us the Shadow Monster, Bob Newby, Justice for Bob, and a whole lot more character development. It also brought a new batch of hilarious outtakes that show the cast getting more comfortable and having even more fun on set. Caleb McLaughlin, who plays Lucas, seems to be having the absolute best time in the blooper reels. There's a scene in Chapter 3, The Pollywog, where he has to burst into a classroom, slamming the door open with his back while holding his walkie-talkie. The teacher inside is supposed to yell at him. In one take, as soon as Caleb turns around after entering, an off-screen crew member asks if he hurt himself. At the exact same time, the actress playing the teacher yells her line, "Excuse me?" Poor Caleb whips his head back and forth, confused about who to respond to, and the actress just breaks down laughing. Realizing the take is ruined, Caleb looks her dead in the eye with the most professional, deadpan expression and just says, "Reset." This, of course, only makes her and the rest of the crew laugh even harder. Will Byers went through a lot in Season 2, and Noah Schnapp's performance was incredible. Will is this gentle, sweet kid, which makes his bloopers all the more endearing. In that same episode, Will and Mike are staring down at the trap where Dustin has caught Dart. They're supposed to look terrified. Noah goes for a dramatic gasp to show his shock, but instead of a gasp, a loud, piggy-like snort comes out. Finn Wolfhard, standing right next to him, just loses it. You can see Noah clamp his hand over his mouth in embarrassment and give the camera this apologetic look. It's adorable. Speaking of intense scenes, the confrontation between Hopper and Eleven in the cabin in Chapter 4, Will the Wise, was a brilliant piece of acting. David Harbour later said that filming that argument was emotionally draining. He felt terrible on the inside, screaming at Millie Bobby Brown like that. Even though it was just acting, he wanted to give her his all so she could give it right back. And man, did they both deliver. On a much lighter note, Paul Reiser as Dr. Sam Owens was a fantastic addition to the cast. And as a comedian, he provided some of the best bloopers. In one scene, he's supposed to walk into a room, turn to Natalia Dyer and Charlie Heaton and say, "It's not very pleasant in here, is it?" Instead, he gets tongue-tied and says, "It is it." But the mess up isn't the funny part. It's what he does after. He makes this series of bizarre, gurgling noises with his mouth while walking out of the room and staring right into the camera. In another take, he flubs a line and starts making these crazy woodchuck noises. It's the perfect contrast to his serious, morally upright character and shows he was probably a blast to have on set. Sometimes bloopers aren't about flubbed lines, but about clumsy accidents. In Chapter 7, The Lost Sister, Eleven is meeting with her aunt, Becky Ives, to go through files about the other kids from Hawkins' lab. In the scene, Amy Simons, who plays Becky, is flipping through documents while Millie Bobby Brown sits on the floor. In one outtake, Amy accidentally smacks Millie right on the head with a folder. There's this beat of stunned silence from Millie, and then she just explodes with laughter. It's so contagious that Amy starts laughing too, trying and failing to get through her next line. Of course, we have to talk about the heartbreaking death of Bob Newby in Chapter 8, The Mind Flayer. The Duffer Brothers have said this was incredibly difficult for them to write because they loved Sean Astin and the character so much. They went back and forth on it, but ultimately decided his death was necessary for the story. Filming that scene was brutal. Ross Duffer explained that they shot everyone else's reactions first, meaning Sean Astin had to lie on the ground all day, screaming his head off for take after take as the Demodogs attacked. And who played the main Demodog that gets on top of him? One of the show's writers, Kate Treffery, covered in fake blood. Talk about taking one for the team. It was an emotionally draining day for the entire cast and crew. Even with all that drama, fans still noticed a few goofs. When Bob logs into the computer system for Hawkins' lab, the date on the screen reads November 11th, 1984, which is incorrect, as this episode actually takes place on November 4th, 1984. And in another scene, when Dustin is explaining to Hopper that you can beat the Mind Flayer in D&D with an undead army, Gaten Matarazzo's microphone wire is visible, taped to the right side of his neck. Here's a classic blooper from the same episode. Gaten Matarazzo, as Dustin, has to run to a ringing phone, pick it up, and slam it back down. Simple, right? Well, in one take, he just can't get it. He keeps smashing the phone against the wall, trying to hang it up, until the entire prop phone just rips off the wall, revealing it has no cables. Realizing the prop is toast and the take is ruined, Gaten just turns to the camera with the biggest, most charming grin and says, "Hey guys," you just can't help but smile. In the Season 2 finale, Chapter 9, The Gate, one of the biggest challenges the Duffer Brothers faced was trying to make all the separate storylines climax at the same time, something they felt they hadn't perfected in Season 1. The solution was a massive 3-part climax that brought everyone's journey to a head before ending on the sweet note of the snowball dance. That powerful reunion between Mike and Eleven, that was actually Finn and Millie's first scene filmed together for the entire season, and that they totally nailed the emotion. For the explosive argument between Mike and Hopper, the Duffers took inspiration from a scene in the movie Almost Famous and encouraged Finn to really go for it, with Matt Duffer saying Finn was really hitting him as hard as he could. The climax itself, which cuts between the lab, the tunnels, and the cabin, was a visual effects nightmare. A short 30-45 second sequence took the team over 20 hours to edit because almost nothing was practically there. In fact, the final showdown where Eleven closes the gate was the only scene in the show with 0 practical effects. The entire environment was digitally created. This was incredibly demanding for the actors. Matt Duffer explained, "We were lifting Millie in the air, David's firing a shotgun that's loud, the cage is shaking back and forth, and Millie thought she was about to throw up. Talk about intense." Season 3 was a summer blockbuster of a season, complete with the Starcourt Mall, the Mind Flayer's grotesque physical form, and some of the best character interactions yet. And with more complex scenes came more opportunities for things to go wrong in the most hilarious ways. Sometimes the bloopers aren't even from the cast. In Chapter 1, Susie, Do You Copy?, there's a scene where Nancy, Natalia Dyer, is running around the back of the buyer's house. As she runs, a random cat just darts out of the bushes, lets out a little meow, runs alongside her for a second, and then disappears back into the foliage. Natalia is so in the zone she doesn't even seem to notice. The cast also had their fair share of physical comedy. Millie Bobby Brown took a tumble in a scene where the group is hauling their radio equipment up a huge hill. She turns to talk to the others and just slips on the grass. To make it funnier, Finn Wolfhard, who's holding her hand, doesn't notice for a split second and keeps walking, pulling her down even more before she finally falls. But the absolute gold from Season 3 has to be David Harbour's giggle fits. There's the scene where Hopper overhears Mike and Eleven getting a bit too close in her bedroom and decides to scare Mike off. He makes up a story about Mike's grandma being sick. It's supposed to be an intimidating, awkward dad moment, but David Harbour could not get through the line. Every time he had to say the word grandma, he would just break down laughing. His laughter is so infectious that eventually Millie and Finn start breaking too. You can just imagine the crew groaning while also trying not to laugh themselves. The friendship between Max and Eleven was a highlight of the season, and it's clear that Sadie Sink and Millie Bobby Brown are great friends in real life. In one blooper from Chapter 3, The Case of the Missing Lifeguard, the Patos, they're supposed to be standing menacingly in a doorway, wearing bright yellow and red raincoats. Instead of being scary, they break character and launch into a completely improvised song and dance about being ketchup and mustard, but it's so creative and goofy. And what would a season of Stranger Things be without a classic line flub? But in that same episode, Will the Wise, dressed in his full wizard getup, is trying to rally his friends for a D&D campaign. He's supposed to declare, "I have seen into the future, and I have seen that today is a new day, a day free of girls." Instead, a dreamy-eyed Noah Schnapp accidentally says, "A day full of girls." A Freudian slip, perhaps? The timing is just perfect, and it's a funny little glimpse into the mind of a teenage boy, both on-screen and off. We have to talk about the sauna test in Chapter 4. That sequence where the kids trap Billy in the sauna was one of the most intense and terrifying scenes in the entire series. Director Sean Levy revealed that it took 3 months of planning and 4 solid 10 to 12-hour days of shooting to get it right. He used handheld cameras to make it feel more chaotic and intense. He praised Millie and Dacre Montgomery for their incredible physical performances. In fact, that moment at the end where Eleven collapses into Mike's arms, that was real exhaustion from Millie. It just goes to show the physical and emotional toll these roles take. The only time a stunt double was used was for a wide shot of Billy being pinned to the wall. Every other part of that brutal fight was Millie and Dacre giving it their all. That's dedication. And let's not forget the nerdiest, most specific continuity error of them all. From Chapter 8, The Battle of Starcourt. You know the moment the fate of the world rests on getting into a safe? And the code is Planck's constant. Susie, to the rescue, recites it as 6.6260704, and the safe opens. The problem? The show is set in 1985, but that number is the value for Planck's constant that was established in 2000. Whoops! So how can a constant change? Well, the actual number in nature never changes, but our ability to measure it gets more and more precise as technology improves. The correct value for 1985 would have been 6.626176. For decades, the entire world's system of measurement was based on a literal chunk of metal in France nicknamed the Grand K. If that cylinder's mass changed even by an eyelash, the definition of a kilogram changed for everyone. So scientists decided to tie it to a universal constant instead. Today, the number has been updated yet again, so you might want to remember 6.626070155, 10 to 3, just in case you ever need to save the world from an interdimensional monster with your long-distance girlfriend. So these have been some of the best bloopers, secrets, and behind-the-scenes stories from Stranger Things. Which blooper or BTS fact was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below, and if you want to see more Stranger Things content and deep dives, click the video on screen now.